Okay. Wow, that's I don't know what's going on here. Okay, I think we're rolling. I wanted to make sure we're taping. Excuse me. Hi. Well, thank you for tuning in. Namaste. Psychic Frank here. Yeah, I'm here the first and the third Thursdays, 5 o'clock. Most people see me on Saturday night on Channel 29 if you're on Comcast, but I do upload the shows. I do that tomorrow here at Bayvac here in San Francisco. Oh, so much. I'm here on time today, so there's no rush. We had a full moon. The Aquarius full moon was early this morning. I was telling someone here, I have a lot of friends with Leo rising and Aquarius on the descendant. And these people are, I always see them as the lights on the runway. You know, these people around them always, you know, they attract people that seems, they think they know what they're doing. Like this, oh, well, they know what they're doing. I'll follow them. You know, they tell them where to go. And, yeah, so just a little bit of, but we're going to talk more about that because it's all about visionary leadership. Yeah, I was leaving the house today, an old day on the news now. They're finding out that there's 8 to 10,000 Mexicans in these, these private prisons. It's an industry, the private prison industry. We knew the ones in El Paso and all that, but no one knew except these reporters for several months have been, they call it the black hole. This this guy from Honduras, a young man who was a certified medical doctor, and is being treated like cattle, like ox, whatever, it's. And Tiananmen Square, might happen again in Hong Kong. Young men and women in China have no idea about Tiananmen Square, where that guy was run down by the tank, in China, when they tried to do something democratic. It's just deleted from all books. So what is that, 20 years ago? So anybody under 20, and I guess their parents are strictly forbidden to talk about it. So, yeah, so, the universe, I got this message from the universe that it's the ultimate recycler. That everything, there's not a mustard seed. Nothing gets wasted. No life, nothing. Nothing, no one, nothing gets not used. It's all, and time is not linear. It's non-linear. It's cyclic. It goes around. I tell people, these people aren't getting away with anything. What goes around comes around. It's almost become cliche, but it's true. Maybe if you're lucky, it'll come around in this life, and your next incarnation will be free of it. I had before I go on, but I wanted to talk about, these Nazis. They're not like Stephen Miller, especially. He's 34, and I just happened to have his birth chart. And he's Donald Trump's #1 advisor, and he's the one. He's even worse than Sessions. He brought Sessions out of his racist closet by, and the whole thing is the cruelty is the point. They're just, so I'm not calling names, but I'm just a rose is a rose, a Nazi's a Nazi. If it walks like a Nazi, talks like a Nazi, you know what? You're a Nazi fascist, And I said on my last show, Stephen, his name is Stephen, 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 because there's a lot of Steve Millers. I was buying cannabis at one of my favorite cannabis dispensaries, Urban Garden, and I was talking to the guy. He was in his 50s, around 20, 30 years younger than me, and I said to him something about Stephen Miller, he might very well be the Antichrist. I don't know. I haven't given him that much energy. And he said, the guy, Steve Miller, and he thought I meant like, Steve Miller, the band, the guy from the 60s, 70s, I can't think of all his songs now, but I like Steve Miller, the singer, from way back, from my day, from way back in the day. I like Steve Miller a lot. No, this is Steven with a PH, so don't type in Steve Miller. It's Stephen Miller with a PH. And he's got a Capricorn rising, and a corrosively contemptuous Pluto in Scorpio, a deep desire for control, often cranky and irritable because he has the moon conjunct Uranus in Sag, 13, 11 degrees in the 11th house. He's a card carrying, dues paying prick. There's no way of saying it. He's evil. He's just totally. I always work on finding some redeemable quality, and the only thing is, we need exactly him. This guy who he's happy when babies are crying for their fathers, and it's sick. This guy's sick. Well, I want to talk about mental illness. I want to talk about, because on my last show, I held up this book. I have the dust jacket at home. It's a really rare book by Shafrica. So Shafrica, like Africa with a shaft in front of it. And then there's Karagula. I love that name, Karagula. I Googled her up, and there's an old woman, and I think she's still around. The picture on the book, the fly jacket, I have taken away because I don't want to take it out of the house. It's so fragile. And taken in the 50s when she was, my age, I guess. Who knows? Anyway, but she's still around. I haven't given. But she talks about the super sane, and excuse me, the super sane, and then she says. At the end here, the super sane. Our human society today, this book was written in the 50s and published in 67. Human society today is faced with the dilemma of the breakdown or a breakthrough within the human being himself or herself. Our breakthroughs in science and technology, she says, are coming. This was back in the 60s, and we all know what that is. And anyway, there must be a breakthrough in human consciousness to match the breakthroughs in science and technology. Yeah, technophiles, they think there's an answer, technology is the answer for everything. They better not pray for the magnetic fields to flip like they're gonna. But, listen to Pam Gregory. Yeah, there's this, she refers this guy who knows all about these vortexes. There's this vortex at 14 degrees Sag. It's called the Great Attractor. See, the galactic center, 27 Sag, where Jupiter's headed for, we're right now as a planet, right in the middle. Our planet Earth is right in the galactic center of the Milky Way galaxy. And that galactic center is a huge black hole void there. That's the biggest in our Milky Way galaxy. Well, the 14-degree Great Attractor makes that look like a kid's toy. It's like it encompasses several galaxies, at least 4. 5 maybe. Ours is just one of them, and that's listen to Pam Gregory. I'll talk more about it later. But it's a great time to be alive, I tell you. So the super sane may be those who are already making this early breakthrough in humans' awareness and somewhat ahead of the rest of humanity. The expansion of man's ability to experience, assimilate, and evaluate his present environment is imperative. If he does not do this, the environment will overwhelm him. There's a lot of insanity around. Like this guy, this representative King, saying that if it wasn't for incest or rape, none of us would be here. We're all the product of incest and rape. It's like insanity. It's a total insane person. It's... Yeah, and what Louise Hay has to say about insanity, I wrote down, and I'll read it to you in a minute when I find it. It's here somewhere. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. So it's higher sensory perception, higher sense perception. Okay, the super sane are not supermen or super women. They are normally intelligent human beings I don't like the phrase normal. I'm not normal. I never will be normal. Uh, they are normally. They say, act normal, Frank. No, no. Uh, the normals. What is it? Tom Robbins in Another Roadside Attraction. Nearly Normal Jimmy. I knew a guy who was nearly normal Jimmy. He wasn't I'm sure there's a lot. Everybody knows a nearly normal Jimmy. They are normally intelligent human beings who are moving through the five sense barrier, to a more expanded area of awareness. It has been customary to suppose that the five sense barrier was a limit beyond which man could not go, just as we were taught the sun barrier was a boundary not to be crossed. Those who exhibit higher sense perception abilities cannot be ignored or bypassed. They are already quietly making outstanding. Well, this. They may be forerunner. We have moved through the 20th century completely enamored by man's scientific discoveries and have lost our perspective on man himself as the initiator or the perceiver. See, that's what quantum physics is all about. Higher sense perception is an unexplored, unmapped country for human ability. The higher sense. So, much research has to be done on this. Higher sense perception, alternative healings. There's so many people who have are born with a healing gift of one sort or another, and but people don't understand. Healing is painful. A lot of times people don't want to go through the pain of a healing. Emotionally, it can be very emotionally, it's a cleansing. It's a cathartic cleansing. I remember after my out-of-body experience, I went through boxes of tissues, because I kept the shrink. I just didn't take pills from him anymore. And I made him listen to all this garbage. Plus, I had AA sponsors. I had sponsors because part of the $20,000 rehab program I went to. With aftercare, you had a contract you had to fulfill. I don't want to mislead people. That was 82. And then in 96, I sort of relapsed. I did relapse, My little world fell apart. Everybody died. My dog died. My best friends, two of them. My whole world just went, and I started drinking again. And then in 2006 is when, but the reason, so I don't want to think like people go to rehab and then instantly you come out cured. I might have sent that message. I don't want to do that. But I did listen to what I was told. And when I did drink again, it screwed up all the knowledge my sponsors had laid on me. Screwed up all my drinking, so it didn't last long. I only drank for a couple of years, and it wasn't that heavy, I just occasionally beer, until I realized I had cirrhosis of the liver. That was a phone call I'll never forget. And now my liver's, beautiful. It's in great shape. I have. What does the woman say to me who did the last sonogram around 10 years ago? The liver is a very forgiving organ. There's no sign you are ever in any danger. But my liver rules my life. Anybody with any kind of liver thing. Milk thistle. Ask your doctor, but I'm sure if he knows. There's so many. I've been doing it now for over a decade. I do. It's another milk thistle, and it's freeze dried. And my liver rules my life. You have to make adjustments if you want to stick around. So what she says here is we do not know how many people may have latent abilities in the field of higher sense perception. Could such people be discovered, encouraged, or trained? It's genius simply designated or certain types of higher sense perception? All these questions now. The whole field presents an adventure into the consciousness of man that can be immensely rewarding. So we have to, like just now I was at the Safeway and it's air conditioned. We're having a really hot day here in San Francisco. It's a heat wave, tropical heat wave. And so at Safeway, I had to get in there to get a banana. It's down the street from here. And there was a whole lot of people in there because it's so cool. And, okay, I'm looking for something. And so I was waiting online, and these two people in front of me, in back of me were talking about the pets places in this neighborhood, and you could go in, and they encourage people and kids to go in and sit with the dogs and calm them down. They could sit outside the cage, and the dog's just like having human. I love this city, and then I said, yeah, I miss having a dog, my parrot, and then I took the parrot, brought the conversation into my 24-year relationship with my parrot, and then I told him I was coming here to do my TV show of Psychic Frank. And then they laughed in my face. So I asked them her birthday, and then I blew her mind. I told her things that she blew her mind, and then she told me today was her son's birthday, and I said, oh, he's an artist. And when I left them, they shook my hand and told me what a thrill it was to meet me. So, but as I said, I live in San Francisco, but there's a lot of women come to me with suffering from major headaches, migraines. It's because you don't want to be psychic, I didn't want to be psychic. I remember when this doctor, Chinese guy, I won't mention his name because he doesn't like it. Years ago, back I was living with the asthmatic heiress. I had a session with him, and he told me all this stuff about I was going to be doing what he was doing. And at the time, I was like in my 30s, and I thought he was a freak. And I cried all the way home. I couldn't even get on the bus. It was dark, and I walked all the way from Children's Hospital to the Haight. And the asthmatic heiress said, how did it go? I said, I can't even talk about it. And then shortly after that, I realized I was a healer, and fate intervened, so it's interesting. Yeah, so this Aquarius full moon is all about. I found that thing about insanity or psychiatric illness, fleeting from the family. I could see why Donald Trump, with a family like his father and Klansmen and all that, mother, there's pictures of him, wearing the hoods. Down Fifth Avenue, wherever. Escapism, withdrawal, violent separation from life. And then you want to now affirm that's what causes any kind of mental illness. The mind knows the true identity. The mind knows its true identity and its creative point of divine self-expression. There's this poem I wrote down by Charles Bukowski, about the laughing heart. And he's an amazing guy, cigarette smoker, gravelly voiced poet. And I played it for my friend Elizabeth, came by yesterday. I don't think she enjoyed him as much as I. For his delight in you. Don't let the you be clubbed out by the masses. They'll just club you. Like Pema, a poet children says, do I prefer to grow up and relate to life directly, or do I choose to live and die in fear? Not me, not me. So yes, so the Stephen Miller, I'm looking at his chart. Yeah, he is nasty. A deep desire for control, as I said. So let me pick a card. What are you going to do? You can't charge somebody, but as I said, for crimes they did in a past life. But I believe, there's a spark of the divine in all of us. And maybe, look what happened to Epstein there. Totally murdered, dead man, tell no tales. I got to realize, unless it's some obscure cable station, picks me up, I'm never going to be on mainstream TV, because I believe the number one health crisis in our country is the pay for advertising on TV by these pharmaceutical companies. And every time you think they've reached a low that's beyond despicable, they come out the next day with an even more. This time they're not only pushing drugs, they're pushing surgery when the drugs don't fail, because they want you to believe there's one drug, there's nothing that doesn't have any side effects. Cannabis, least amount of side effects. I think the side effect now is it's expensive. Although I believe the black market's coming back for that. I'm happy about that. So this is still Leo big chart hard energy. So I hope you're having fun in all this, in spite of the all the mess we've had. There's been extra joy in my life, and I'm aware. So I'm going to put Steven's chart away, but do yourself a favor and listen to. He's a 9 life path, which I tell all 9 life paths. He came in to complete things, but on a daily basis. August 23rd is his birthday, so that vibrates to 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 4. Very controlling 4. See, everything has a shadow, and 4s can either be a good parent or a really terrible parent. So, yeah, he's definitely with the moon conjunct Uranus is Sag. He has a mother who ran roughshod over him, and I believe he's taking it out on the world. I can't believe Donald Trump, boy, he knows there's not a snowball chance in hell that he's going to get elected again. So what Bannon said in his book, and I believe he's even said it in interviews, that he wants a civil war. He wants, killings in the street. When he doesn't get elected, he's going to say all of his third are going to, do Helder Keller. It's sort of like we got the Charlie Manson family run in the White House now. We got Ivanka Squeaky Frome. She is squeaky. Listen to her. She's squeaky Frome. See, I sound like Donald now, making fun of people, but I'm not perfect. Yeah, Reverend, what's his name? Bishop Barba. Beautiful, nice-sized, abundant man of Bishop. He's a man of color. He said the religious right is the religious wrong. Yeah, you got that right. We're here to bear witness and tell your truth. As I said, in '96, I was given a trip to Paris with my best friend I've known for years. He wanted me to see Paris, and I ended up spending a week in New York on either side of the month, April in Paris. So I spent a week and a week. And he had a lot of business in the city, so I went out to Long Island, visit my aunts, and spent time with people I had grew up with. And I was raised in an Italian neighborhood on Long Island. And I didn't realize how racist Italians were. I was I'm not going to, Hispanics, where you lift off the icks and you call them spicks, that's what I was raised with, so when I was riding around Glen Cove and I would point out and they go, oh, that's where the N's live, or that's where the S's, the S word I just said. But believe me, I love my Latin American friends. I spent many times, but I'm just saying. And then I moved here in '72. And I just started moving into communes and tuned in, turned on, dropped out, got off all the heavy drugs. And no one I knew, I was best friends with Sylvester, rest his soul. We lived right around the corner from each other, and we really got each other. I miss him. And, and it's just, then I moved to Hawaii for a couple of years and, got along well with all the locals. So, I've been far, far removed from all this racist stuff I grew up with. So then in '96, I find myself riding around and hearing all, and, it was sort of like shock. And I didn't want to think about it. And then I just, didn't hop out of the car. It's sort of like when the fixer, Michael Cohen, said he was riding around with Trump, and Trump looked at the black ghetto and said, only these people can live like this. It's like, wow. Well, the news flash it's like a public service message. It's not immigrants taking our jobs, and it's not. I know what's happening to our jobs. Corporations, greedy corporations who have stockholders, who are greedy stockholders, who are making the corporate heads do these things, but they're going into countries with cheap labor. All this stuff is going on, and see, they want you to think everything that's happening, this racist stuff and this persecution of Latinos, and my Chicano brothers and sisters, is they're the ones that are doing. No, they don't want you to see. Every time you point at something, you got three more fingers pointing at. It's all these rich corporations, and it's the greedy stockholders, and it's the people who want cheap stuff. They want cheap things. They, dirty deeds done dirt cheap. You know. Anyway, grudges are for those who insist that they are owed something. Forgiveness, however, is for those who are substantial enough to move on. There's only one reason people look back. It's because they are choosing at that precise moment to be bitter. Don't be bitter. All good things are wild and free. Henry Thoreau said that. Henry David Thoreau. It's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. So then I experimented on Facebook for a couple of years, 2 years I'll never forget. And then the Trump thing came. Hillary, lost. And then I realized how many people I went to high school with were mad when I said things about Trump. And then I put it all together. I could be very slow on some things, especially, that you don't want to think that these people that were your friends, your close friends at one time, and you were like that. Yeah, I had to realize at one time I had to pretend to, I never really, I was always getting beat up. I would always go to school and I would drive into the parking lot of my senior year, and then they'd bang my head. They were waiting for me, the white hitters, and we saw you up at the projects, because the black people were smoking weed, dancing, they're all dead now. Mostly all the black people I graduated from high school with all died from drug overdoses and addictions and stuff, had really rough lives. And yet the white kids I graduated with still want to put more statues up to Vietnam friends there, soldiers who lost their friends in Vietnam. Why don't we, use all this money to, and it goes right back to this, the Central America crisis, is educate. Go down there and train people, clean up their homeland, make them want to stay there. We'll have to, instead, all this money we're spending for the private prison industry. It's I just heard that this morning. I'm still digesting it. Leonardo da Vinci said, "It had long since come to my attention that people of accomplishment rarely look back and let things happen to them. They went out and happened to things." So get out there and happen to things. That's what I do. Oh, yeah, so this morning I had this whole scenario planned, and then I opened a drawer, and this thing from the 4th century popped into my hand, and I'm going to share it with you. It's called Transcendence, and it was written by a Greek in the 2nd century BCE. Alice Walker said, "Anything we love can be saved." I love that. And Transcendence is Hermes, Hermes, and it's Trismegistus, Trimiguous. Transcendence said, and on, it's only very short sentences here, and in that day when men will be weary of life, comma, and in that day when men will be weary of life, and they will cease to think of the universe worthy of reverent wonder and of worship. They will no longer love this world around us, ... this glorious structure, ... as to the soul and the beliefs that it is immortal by nature or may hope to attain immortality. All this they will mock at, and they will even persuade themselves it is false. Man, that's mind-blowing, so ponder that. Paradigm, the next 5 years, we're having our first Pluto return. Yeah, that's 240 years in the making. Refugees are not taking jobs. Corporations are, because of cheap things. Yeah, so actually, someone just sent me this today about this full moon today. The Aquarius full moon was early this morning, so tonight's the night of the full moon. Actually, tonight we got um, the moon will be out of Pisces and into Pisces this evening, actually 8:49 p.m. So Leo is the heart, Aquarius is the head. Without each other, both are dangerous. I like that. When they coexist, things go well. The mystical marriage, the marriage between the brain and the heart. Don't forget, thump your thymus every day. Look it up. Google it up. Okay, and on the 11th now, Jupiter went direct in Sag, and it felt like the noose came unraveled. The portal opened, and the wave of expansion, wisdom, blessings, and gratitude now bestow themselves in your life. Yeah, things are going to change on right around Saturday in 2 days from now when Mars enters Virgo. The Sun enters Virgo on the 23rd. Venus enters Virgo on the 21st. Excuse me. Mercury on the 21st there. Mercury, yeah, on the 29th. So everything changes from all this fun, playful Leo, very dramatic. The heart connection. The heart's the most powerful magnet in our body. It pulls to us all that's ours and repels all that's not like us. We get in trouble when we try to mess with that. The second half of this now is everything shifts into Virgo. Action, and that's when I believe the courts are going to start releasing a lot of these very incriminating facts of tax that that are hard to explain about the money laundering. Yeah, that moron Eric Trump, a couple of years ago, just boasted that, oh yeah, all our money comes from Russia. Yeah, it's like take him anywhere but out. Just yesterday I saw him. He looks almost normal. They clean him up. He sits there, and if you didn't know who he was, you'd think, wow, nice young man. No, he kills animals. He kills endangered species. Remember that picture of him with a lion? Him and his brother shot a lion. He's evil. He's a moron. He's an idiot. And he proved it. Then he opened his mouth, and he started talking about these popcorn things and how the press doesn't cover it. He's got popcorn for brains. He's sort of like the line. He's not as evil as so much as Ronald Reagan had a head like an empty shoebox. The second half, everything shifts, moves to, Mercury now is on the 15th of this month. Like when it went retrograde, it was, why guess? I have it right here. When it went retrograde, it was 4 degrees 27 Leo. And this is the shadow period. So on the 15th, Mercury will be once again 1427 Leo. So that period is called the shadow period. And then we'll see things pick up from them. So think of all the delays we've had personally and collectively. And that's what's going to be, we'll see some breakthroughs there. Remember, cynicism is intellectual treason. This is happening for us, not to us. Those who don't heal don't have an imagination. It takes a schooled imagination to heal. Early in my recovery, I keep on getting back to that because, seeing this Epstein guy, I had no idea there was such a thing as Love and Sex Addicts Anonymous. But when I got into recovery, I hated every minute of it, but I learned a lot. I only went like a year and a half, and then I I had enough. I'm not a joiner. Because unlike a lot of these people, I couldn't get them to understand I had this out of body experience and I didn't realize it, but I was wasting all my energy and allowance trying to convince these people who thought I was a wet brain drunk. They didn't know what I was talking about. So but I was sober. I was sober as a judge. So, yeah, and there were a lot of people. I met people from all walks of life with habits, not only alcohol, narcotics, and sex and love addicts anonymous. And then and I would hear these stories about what these people would do for sex addicts. And they look like normal people, men and women, and I'm not saying nymphomaniacs. I think that's a different thing. Now, these are people who, their lives were unmanageable because of it. Very interesting, very interesting. And so why, with all his money, wouldn't, somebody drag him to one of those meetings? All these people with all this money. And I wish back in the 60s, psychoanalysis, Carl Jung, there was this whole thing about, Dr. Jung. Yeah, psychoanalysis was a big deal, We were always psychoanalyzing everybody else. It was R.D. Laing, The Politics of Experience. All these great things, Alan Watts. The funny thing about Alan Watts is a few years ago I met this woman, Sita, I forget her last name, and she's passed on now. She lived to be almost 100 in a beautiful home in Palo Alto, and they left us at this table, sitting at this table for like 3 hours. And it was like 5 minutes passed. The two of us were just like kindred spirits. We are kindred spirits. And she pointed down the hall and she goes, "That's where Alan used to spend weekends here." And my husband would be reading the paper and we'd be having our Sunday morning breakfast. And we'd hear ice cubes in the glass clinking. And we'd say, "Oh, Alan's awake." And now I have, for years, been collecting Alan Watts books. And there's early Alan Watts, like early Elvis. And then there's like old Alan Watts, and I picked up one of the more not new, but the stuff he wrote when he was an alcoholic, and it's the ramblings of a drunk. So it's very tricky. I wanted to share that with you. Don't read Earl. If you're going to read Alan Watts, early Alan Watts is when he was at his very, very best. Towards the 80s, when he was late 70s there, when he was living up in, San Rafael, and his publishers were forcing him to keep his alcohol habit going, and ex-wives or whatever. He had all these things. People always have excuses to sell out, And so there's a whole lot of Alan Watts. I'm not throwing them away, but I want to share that. Don't think because he has such a great reputation. Because I was reading him the other day, and I just threw it across the room, and I said, I might as well go sit at a bar and listen to some drunk, talk bull, because, but his early stuff, early Alan Watts, I love. When he was diseased, when he got diseased, the disease of alcoholism, make it a wasm, so all these things about, I wanted to say, work on your character defects. It's not, anybody could stop. Like I always tell people, don't just quit smoking, become a non-smoker. Otherwise, you've been saying, "Oh, I haven't had a cigarette for 4 months, 3 days, and 48." No. Once you're a non-smoker, you hang with non-smokers. A non-drinker. I don't drink alcohol. I don't eat meat. Meat is murder. You go through a transition. Where it's like awkward until you adjust. So okay. So and Virgo's all around the health. So right now, let the good times roll. So this insanity, we've got a lot of super sale. So if Clara Luga is all, and I believe she's spot on about the sane and the super sane, what does she call it? The super sane versus the super sane, versus the insane. It made me realize that, by watching the TV today, and that guy saying, there's a lot of insane people running around out there, Oh yeah, and Toni Morrison, bless her soul, rest in peace. She left us on the 6th just a few days ago. Oppressing language does more than represent violence, semicolon. It is violence, dot, dot, dot. It's the language that drinks the blood, laps vulnerabilities, tucks its fascist boots under crinolines of respectabilities and patriotism, like my friends I went to high school with, who they look respectable, and they meet Jewish people and black people, and then they are all smiles, But so they hide this fascist, tucks its fascist boots under her crinolines of respectability and patriotism as it moves relentlessly toward the bottom line of bottomed out minds. What we're looking at in Donald Trump is a bottomed out mind, Oh, boy. Yeah, breakthroughs of creativity, the super saints. So it's not Democrats versus Republicans, liberals versus conservatives. It's the super sane versus the super insane. I don't know. How good can you eat? Look at Moscow Mitch. They found out a couple of years, like 4 or 5 years before Donald Trump hit the scene, 96 there, 2016, he was taking lots of money from Putin. And Putin was putting him, So, boy, we got to. He's not. He's a Benedict Arnold. These once again, these are recycled souls. These are people who God put here, so we can move through and be. It takes emotional pain for us to move. Any kind of movement, enlightenment comes from emotional pain at first. Because anger means you're getting closer to truth. So don't get stuck in anger. Don't get stuck in anger. Carrie Walters said something interesting. And if you want to hear more about astrology, she still writes for the Mountain Astrologer, Kathy Rose. Google her up. She has a YouTube videos on astrology, very short ones though. But if you really want to hear about what's going on with the magnetic poles getting ready to shift, you want to listen to Pam. She doesn't exactly say the poles are going to shift. That's Greg, some other guy I know. He's on cable. He wrote a lot of books. I can't remember his name now, but he takes it for granted that the poles shift. They do and we're like way beyond where they should have flipped. They haven't flipped for a long, long time, but eventually they flip, and that's gonna be very interesting. So. But I do believe there's always going to be help. There are ETs around us. Okay, so. What he says here, Carrie Walters, giving up God to find God. Carrie Walters is really onto something, and I'll tell you what he says here. It's a precise. This is precisely the logic of ideology, people worshiping idols, And what it is the divine parent. In order to cope with these terrors, we invent, unknowingly, of course, a divine parent who will protect us just as our earthly parents did when we were youngsters. Well, mine surely didn't, but that's another story. We ascribe to this God parent the power to fix the things that frighten us by controlling the material world. That's where we've been with science for the last, 200 years. Wickedness of others, or at least punish them for what they do, and giving us an afterlife. We offer this God our allegiance in return for him keeping us safe. Religion, in other words, becomes a protection racket. For this part, Bonhoeffer there, this German guy, concludes that what might we need to overcome the mutation of God into is a religiousless Christianity, a religiousness Christianity. Like I said, nature is my religion, and the earth is my church. On my last show, I talked about trying how important it is to remember patience is a virtue and work on it. And I told a story about this man who acted like a child and saw a butterfly struggling to get out of its cocoon, and he cupped his hands, snapped the branch off, cupped his hands on, and blew his hot breath on it, and the thing came out mutilated and died. You can't rush things. Things take time. Learn to appreciate the journey. And then the very next 2 days later, I found a pass to the Museum of Science. Someone had given me last year, and I lost it, and then I opened a book, and it fell out. So I went to the monastery, the Cristo Rey Monastery, and lit a candle, and then I crossed over to Golden Gate Park, and then walked over, and they have this rainforest thing where you have to go in this little room, and then it fits around 20 people, and then they shut one door, and then they give you a little talk about don't touch the butterflies, and when you leave, make sure there's none hitching a ride out of there. There's like wild, all kinds of finches and butterflies, and then you walk around this huge cage, and up on top, all these beautiful butterflies all over me. And I said, wow, just 2 days ago, I was talking about the butterflies, and I expected I would see, science things, but nobody told me about the butterflies. They're beautiful, and I can't wait till school is back, and there won't be as many kids. And I'll go there when there's less children early in the morning or something, because I definitely want to take it in again. And although, I love kids, there were a lot of them. It was like and they only come up to your knees, and they were so sweet and everything, but they're loud. Kids are loud. But in spite of the kids, not in spite, that's a terrible thing to say. I don't know. It was perfect. I'll go back. The universe works with you and for you. It's not your enemy. David Spangler said that. We live in the lap of immense intelligence, which makes us receivers of its truth and organs of its activities. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that. So this religiousness Christianity that weans us from our frightened addiction to superhero God, whose only task is to pull our chestnuts out of the fire, a Christianity liberated from the fear that breeds idolatry had, this guy believed, a chance of recentering God in our midst rather than exiling him to the hinterlands. To paraphrase Eckhart, it could get rid of God for God's sake. And then he says, Thomas Merton, among others, knew all too well that violence is born of fear. Yeah, the white people are afraid that the Jews and the people of color are taking their jobs. And they could be trained, the human mind, human beings can change. I think back at the addictions I've had, and with the help of my higher power, they're gone, Well, I keep them at bay. Who knows, I don't go testing that anymore. Okay. Frightened people see everything as a threat. They dwell in a hostile universe, i.e., that Trump, what they're unable to trust, much less love. So their habitual response to the world is one of fight or flight, and this is the idolatrous modus operandi as well. But in reducing God to God, they not only do themselves no service, but they act aggressively against God by rejecting the nature with which God has gifted them. They both flee from the living God and fight against their God-given nature as free creatures. We're going from it's like to children of God. It doesn't be child. It doesn't mean childlike. Don't be childlike, God may be ever present, but unlike the iron gods, he talks about this one guy as a kid wanted God to be iron until he realized iron rusts. There are two kinds of freedom from and freedom to. Both are essential for well-being. Giving up one for the sake of the other is a bad deal. To To thrive politically and socially, we require a certain amount of freedom from illegitimate interference into our lives. My flourishing depends, for example, on my freedom from grinding poverty, from dehumanizing prejudice. Being gay, yeah, that was what I had to deal with in New York. In a political context, what constitutes genuine freedom from may get fuzzy at times. Do I have a right to be free? Am I having from having to listen to foul language in the subway? Am I entitled to be free from in-your-face advertising gimmicks? Yeah, this is what's going on now. Our minds are getting raped by. That's why I think I'm not being dramatic, over dramatic. This is a public health crisis. I've got a few minutes left. I'm going to pick a few cards for you all. Boy, time just flies by. Got 2 minutes, though. Okay. What do my guys want you guys to know? Let me pick a card here. Okay. Channel of love. It's all about love. Be a channel of love and compassion. Random acts of kindness. Whatever stirred up a lot now is going to go away real fast now that on the 15th when Mercury gets to its shadow period. Listen to Pam Gregory. Okay, knowledge is coming in now. A lot of people are waking up now, and light bulbs are going off. We're growing up. There's the king of what emotionally. Okay, the work to be done now. Boom, boom, boom. Yes, we're giving birth to the new age now. This is what's going on. Nagasaki and Iwo Jima there, the first two nuclear. Those were the first contractions of the. Okay, what's going on now is we have to notice that the sadness card, there's a lot of sadness there, but the swords of symmetry. We go, instead of pushing the sadness away, we incorporate it in our lives now. We don't let it cripple us. We don't fight the sadness with drugs and liquor. And now here we are, eternally in our prime. Life is wonderful. Everything is perfect in my world, and we're always moving to greater good. 500 times. We all need to be saying this. Log on into the dream state. Leave your troubles at the end of your bed. Give your angels permission to straighten out things for you and guide you. A dream uninterpreted is like a letter unread. I'll be back here, God willing, on September 5th, just before the harvest moon on the 13th. Okay, thank you. Bye.